So we're very excited, Dawn, and very honored that you are sharing your research and your passion with us today.
Well, thank you, Alcris. It's really good to be with you all. I'm joining you from the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and this land is called Mi'kma'ki, and which comprises of Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, southern New Brunswick, and parts of Newfoundland. I don't know what else to say because Chris said so much more than I sent to her. So I'd love to know where you found all that. But it's really good to be with you all. I love my work with CCS, and it's really a joy to be here. So I'm going to share my screen. And as I said, I know that sometimes when you hear that something's going to be about art, it can raise some anxieties. So let me try and just alleviate some of those right now. I'm not going to ask you to do any kind of major art project today. I'm not going to ask you to share anything that you've made. And I'm also not here to convince you that you must be an artist. I could argue that you are an artist, and you'll hear about that in a few minutes, but I'm not here to tell you that you must be an artist in order to do ministry or to be a human being. But hopefully some of the experiences I share will inspire you, and maybe some of the other things that you do as well. So to begin, I'd like us to do an opening. And I'm wondering if I could have a volunteer who would unmute and read the bold print for the group. You just raise a hand. Heather, I think I saw, Heather McKinnon. Thank you so much. On the sixth day, God said, "Let us make humankind in our image."
So the wind grew strong over the swelling sea, and from the moist earth, humanity was born.
Spirit and flesh were formed in the likeness of God.
Male and female came forth together.
And the words of heaven were spoken on earth, "Be fruitful and multiply."
The earth is yours, and you are the earth's, the seeds, the seas, the creatures.
Everything that has breath and every plant that grows.
Be strong in my likeness and guard the unity of life.
God saw all that had been created, and it was very good. The relationship of earth and human, woman and man had begun.
And there was evening and morning, creation's sixth day.
Thank you. Amen. The earth is yours, and you are the earth's, the seeds, the seas, the creatures, everything that has breath, and every plant that grows. And what invitation do you hear in these words? If you want to just unmute yourself and share just a few words of what is the invitation that you hear with these words?
I would say the invitation of awe and wonder.
Aaron wrote invitation to spend time in nature.
Included.
Invitation to care.
Invitation to open our hearts towards the creation of God.
Natalie wrote reciprocity.
The invitation to be held.
Thank you.
I hear perspective.
To expand our hands, our hearts, our minds, our living.
Thank you. Robert wrote an invitation to humility that's too long overdue, and Gwen wrote to belong. And an invitation to enjoy the peace that comes from earth, from Shanann Lane. I forget that I am with a group of people who've been educated in very interactive adult education models. So usually when I ask a question, I might get 2 or 3 responses. So I'll try to keep that in mind as I'm timing my presentation. So what we're talking about is co-creation. God has invited us to take a particular role in creation. And in my research, and it was actually the people that I interviewed are Anglican clergy who also do art, and I asked them about their understanding of vocation when it comes to their ministry and to their art. And it was them that really raised this theology of co-creation with me in terms of how they understand their relationship to art, but also their relationship to ministry and to just their world. And so for any of us who have done any kind of exploration of ourselves, we're probably familiar with the word vocation. And Parker Palmer, who talks about a voice, sometimes we think that we're waiting for a voice out there that is calling us to become something, to turn into something that maybe we are not, or that we are not yet. And in fact, Palmer says, and this is my experience, that it comes from a voice inside, whether we call that God or our own intuition, our consciousness. It comes from a voice calling us to be the person we were born to be, the original selfhood given at birth. And I would say given at creation, on what is in most editions of the Bible, on the first page of the Bible, right there, that invitation to be made to participate and be part of God's creation as leaders, as stewards. And in this image of God, and I wanted to highlight this statement again, because I love how John Philip Newell translates Imago Dei, to be strong in my likeness and guard the unity of life. So there are some actual tangible benefits to doing any kind of creative practice, whether you doodle or take pictures with your camera phone or do pottery or write. We all write, I imagine, in our ministries and in our work somehow. So there's been some really good research coming out of, I can't remember, I meant to look up the university, but the researcher is named Dr. Margaret Clark and her team, and they've been researching Canadian clergy since the pandemic, and particularly about our resilience. And they've interviewed people from across theological spectrums, across denominations. And the good news is, as church leaders, we tend to be pretty resilient, all told. I know we might not always feel that way, but we are able to shoulder an awful lot. And along with, it has to be said, along with a healthy workplace, these are the 4 things that their research found were supportive to clergy resilience. The first was using theology to make meaning out of our own experiences, out of the experiences of our communities, a clear sense of calling, and an understanding of ministry as partnership with God. So co-creating ministry, co-creating our work together and co-creating with community. And this last one was spiritual practices, all kinds of different spiritual practices, but they specifically name creation, is how they put it, or creative practice. And again, that could be creating all kinds of things. It could be cooking and baking. It could be gardening as well, or also great creative practices, spiritual practices. And what makes these practices beneficial is an experience called flow. In spiritual language, we might talk about transcendence or contemplation or meditation as a type of experience we have in prayer. When it comes to art or any kind of invention or creativity, Dr. Csikszentmihalyi is kind of seen as the one who identified this term flow. And he calls it's an optimal experience where we're so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. And it's so enjoyable that we would do it at great cost. We'll spend lots of money on it. We'll spend lots of time on it just to do it. That's flow. And I gotta say, not every time that I take out my camera feels like flow. But art is one of the ways that we have this positive dreamlike experience from doing a real-time task and an ability to meet that challenge. And the way that the folks I interviewed, one of the big ways they talked about their experience of flow was either as grounding or centering. And MC Richards is a potter, and she's also a teacher, an art teacher for many decades. She wrote a wonderful book called Centering, which is part of actually the process of making a pot, of when the clay goes onto the wheel, and the process of centering it so it doesn't wobble all over the place. And this is a bit of a complex quote, but I'll read it slowly so maybe we can hear it. Centering is how we may seek to bring universe into a personal wholeness and into act the rich life which moves so mysteriously and decisively in our bodies, manifesting in speech and gesture, materializing as force in the world, the unifying energy of our perceptions. So there's a gathering, bringing things together. And here's just a few quotes from my research from folks that talked about who raised this idea of grounding or centering. This first one is by another potter. It's just a loss of time, a loss of sense of time. It's a pure focus and the joy of beholding whatever is created. Another said that it's about being fully present in the moment, that nothing else really matters except what's immediately in front of me, which is such a brain break. And so it's a break, but it also refills her tank. And then finally, a beadworker said, beadwork is something that I always turn to as something that centers me and grounds me. So I've convinced you, you're all excited to pick up an art practice and go. So I just want to, one of the things I think it's, I know in my experience, when I take something on, how important it is for me to start well. Because if I don't start well with the right perspective, then it just all falls apart. So I've just finished doing a program you might have heard of called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a 12-week book, and it's written to help unblock people who are creative in all kinds of different ways. One of the things she suggests is to keep your art to yourself for a while. Don't subject it to public scrutiny and criticism too quickly, and don't anticipate how it will be received on Instagram, because you want to keep it playful. We have an image of the tortured artist, and in fact, what keeps artists coming back to their art again is it being able to keep it playful. It's a place where they can experiment. You know, if you like to paint, pull out some water guns, use your fingers, do kind of things like that. I have to say, and I've seen this time and again, that 80% of obstacles that beginners face are due to poor or inappropriate materials. So whatever you want to do, and it doesn't mean it has to be expensive, but whatever you want to do, try and get material that's made for what you want to do. For example, if you want to try watercolors, get a good set of watercolor paper so that you don't experience that puckering and discoloration that comes with using the wrong paper. Just that kind of thing. Asking other artists and asking people at craft shops, they're so great. And to start small. Don't go out and buy the like multi-$100 starter kit of the thing that you want to do. For example, if you wanted to try painting, start with five small tubes of paint: red, blue, yellow, black, and white, and a brush and a $5 canvas. They're pretty good, and just see where it goes. Keep it playful, keep it small. You want to reduce the expectations on yourself when you're beginning. So one thing you might want to try is to set a timer. Don't put this expectation in your head that you're going to enter into this flow experience right away and you're going to be at it for 3 hours. Set a timer for 10 minutes and see how much you do and see how you feel after 10 minutes. Highly recommend taking classes or just join a circle. I also do fiber art. I do rug hooking, and I love taking folks to, I just love sitting down with people and bringing my knitting or my rug hooking. And then to just let yourself be a beginner. And for a lot of us who have, particularly who've been through an education system for a while, if we're reaching like graduate level degree, like it's not easy for us to put ourselves back in a place where we're coming at something brand new. But that's really where we find that joy of beginning things again. So getting ready to transition into our discussion groups, we're going to just take a few minutes and answer a couple of questions. I'm going to invite you into a transition exercise. So if you just want to grab something that you can make a mark with, a marker or a pen or whatever you might have with you, and a piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note, it can be something, but ideally pen and paper, not using your computer. And just start with drawing a circle. And then draw 2 lines through that circle in any direction. So as you see there, you can make them perfectly square or put them in different directions, whatever you like. I promise I won't make you share it, but I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes and just fill those sections in with whatever you like. All right. So I'll invite you to go into, I assume there's breakout rooms somewhere, and to have some time with these 4 questions. How do you understand your vocation as a co-creator with God? What was your favorite craft as a child? And maybe with your group, describe how you would do it. Maybe what's something you wish you could do? And what do you think is stopping you from doing it? And how could you make time in your life and ministry for creative play? So I'll pass it back over to Scott, and we'll go into our groups. Wherever you are at the end of this conversation is good. And I just, I hope that whatever you take away from this is something that is enriching for your soul and maybe gives you a little more permission to play and to have fun at whatever it is that feeds your soul.
Thank you so much for inspiring us and challenging us and stretching our imagination together and making you, at least me, a new commitment